Hello and welcome to Man's Model Moments. We are on a Friday. The week is over, at least in the UK. I appreciate for my American viewers, they may not have got there yet. In which case, what are you doing watching this? You should be working. But I do have a couple of streams tonight, as I'm sure you will have noticed. I've got this one for the next couple of hours. Can take an hour break. I'm going to eat and speak to my girlfriend, who's in Barcelona at the moment. And then we're going to come back and do a couple more hours. So I think we should be able to crack on with this and get, I'm hoping, fingers crossed, the majority of this painted. So had a really good day in the shop today. A lot of people coming in, which is good because I had some not so good news yesterday. In that I was doing, in my day role, a consultancy for a company in Germany. That, unfortunately, is ending. So that is my primary income. And the shop at the moment is, well, I'll be very frank, it's losing money. So I'm hoping that, one, I can find other gainful employment, not in the not too distant future, and two, that the shop does pick up and actually can at least pay for itself, because if it's not costing me money, that's okay. Otherwise, maybe a fairly short-lived venture. So for those of you in the UK who watch this, if you can go over to mansmodelmoments.com, and if you see any models that you're thinking of buying, I would be happy to supply them to you. I do try to be competitive with web pricing. My prices might be a tiny bit more in some cases, a little bit less in some others, including places like Jadlam. I am actually cheaper than them in some areas. I got a whole load more stuff in the shop today. What you see on the website at the moment is not the final stock. I try and put it in the shop first because that at least gets it active, and then try and put it on the web store afterwards. I appreciate the web store is a broader reach. It takes much more time to actually put stuff on there in a way that's reasonable, because you want to see pictures of the box, you want to see some description, all that kind of good stuff. And then again, for the search engines and things, you need that. So I've got a load of Italieri armor, I've got a load of Tamiya armor, not yet currently live on the store. I got some Miniart kits in today. I've got some AK Interactive weathering sets, so mud and grime, slime and oil, and interior weathering and exterior weathering, weathering for aircraft, weathering for ships. I got some spray paints and some chrome pens, so Molotow chrome pens. I recommended on a couple of my videos, I think. Really, really good. I use them myself. That's why I reviewed the dealership on them. What else have we got? Some Sakura pens, other bits and bobs. So that will all be going on. I've got a bunch more secondhand stuff as well. Some really interesting kits, some things that, one of which actually I looked up on ScaleMates. It doesn't even exist on ScaleMates. That's how it slipped through the cracks. It's actually a set of 3 Hella motorbikes. That were boxed as Airfix back in the 80s, and I just did one run of them. And yeah, not even on ScaleMates. So I'm going to have to create a ScaleMates entry. That'll be my first addition to ScaleMates, my bit of something for posterity. Again, as I said, I think the other night, if I sneeze, which I think I'm going to do in a second, it's excuse me, there we go. I knew that was coming. It seems to be late September. We've got unseasonably nice weather, as you can probably see just through the windows out here. It is actually sunny, and whatever it is that is producing pollen at this time of the year is triggering my hay fever. So apologies if I do that, those explosive sneezes from time to time. I will try to give you warning because I can feel them coming. But But yeah, so it's been a really eventful couple of days. I also got a parking ticket today, which I need to take up with the parking guy, because parking outside my own shop, I don't think really I should get a parking ticket for. But all these things aside, tonight what you came for is to see the Hunter. I have literally not touched it. So let me thank you, Michelle, thank you, Richard, for blessing me. I'm fairly sure my soul is damned anyway, but I am a complete heretic, as I'm sure you all are aware. So this is exactly, I will be getting these burner clamps in the shop as well. Again, thanks to Nunu, Plastic Alchemist, for giving me the links. He actually works for part of the company, I believe, that produced them, Hobbycraft. So here we have the Hunter as I left it. So let's just release those clamps. But I had some really nice people in shop. Daniel, who's my most regular customer, actually lives in Wincanton. Really nice guy. Bought a couple of kits from me today. Some pieces of armor. He's a big armor guy, which was much appreciated. But he was only the first of several customers. Had my best day in the shop so far to date, and some really nice chats. I think one of the good things about a modeling shop is that value add, that hopefully I give. And one of the things that one of the guys said kind of alluded to that. Sometimes it's just nice to go into a shop, although the internet, has dominated our market a lot. Going to model shop, generally, if you're looking on the internet, you're looking for a specific thing, right? Whereas if you go into a model shop, you might see something which you had never imagined, or just something slightly unusual, and you think, oh yeah, I'll get that. And if you are a newer modeler or a returning modeler, there's always the possibility of getting some advice, some discussion, some help, whatever. So a few of those discussions today was really, I think that's a really rewarding part of having a retail premises like that. So there we go. That's where we were last time. I can definitely feel that weighting in the nose, which is good. So let's get rid of that for the time being. And just go back to our instrucciones. So we have the tail to add, then the wings, then I can put the wells in and close up those pieces. Horizontal stabilizers, rudder, flaps and ailerons, to make a decision about what I'm going to do with these. I might ask you guys to decide some of these factors. I think that would be appropriate. That should all kick on quite easily. Then we have landing gear. A decision I have to make is, I wasn't aware that there was that piece in. If I planned this better, I might have actually looked at that, but whichever piece goes in there, is that going to stop us putting landing gear in afterwards? Or we're going to have to put it on and then mask it up with the spraying. I generally prefer to do the landing gear separately, painting, getting them all ready, weathering and stuff before putting them onto the model at the end. But we may not be able to do that. Not sure on that one. Oh, moving things around. Excuse me. So let me just go to the chat while I am contemplating that. So John Alec, Richard Brace, Andy Heselton, World War II scale models. Dave, Exploring Unseen, Michelle Edwards, Doc Sawyer, Aaron Nichols. Welcome all. I think we have a select few tonight, but I'm starting earlier, so I kind of expected that. That's why I was doing 2 sessions, because I thought if I do 6 till 8, we'll kind of capture some of the earlier risers, and then if I do the later 9 to 11, maybe more the US, and those who like to look at things later on in the night can have a look. We shall see how we proceed. So, all of that aside, let us get to putting these bits together. Now, of course, you need the sexy gogs. So this is quite an interesting bit, because you do have a bit of wiggle room there, but it is quite obvious when you've got it in the right place. You do have to make sure that that rudder or tail fin is going to properly align as well. So far, this looks like the most challenging piece of assembly we've had to do so far, because the rest of this kit, I think you will agree, has been pretty easy to get together. So, see how we get on here. Oh, that's a little bit too much there. There we go. I don't mind being liberal with Tamiya extra thin, but there is a point at which it becomes counterproductive. Principally, you want enough to be able to wet and melt the parts, but you don't want to retard its evaporation really by having so much there it's swimming around and just dissolving styrene and creating lots of styrene monomers that are just floating about. But you can see that has gone on pretty well. We have pretty good coverage. The only thing is this tail. Just want to make sure that we align properly at the rear there. It doesn't slip out to one side. Just a little bit of a gap there. Nothing disastrous. There's a bit of a gap there, but that I think is because of how I did the fuselage to start with. I'll just give a little bit of extra along this seam. And I don't really want to touch that because it's easy to get our fingers in the glue, even with Tamiya extra thin. But these burner multi-clamps are quite nice for being able to apply just enough pressure. Of course, there's silicone, so nice and soft. Not going to react with anything. And we can get that right on the edge there. There. Good, good, good. going to check the rest of the airframe. How is the time to be able to go and just check? I don't know. Squeaky seams, I would call them. So areas where we didn't perhaps get plastic cement where we needed it. I've just put my finger on that. That's not ideal. Got away with it. Yeah, just areas where plastic is together but not actually cemented. And you can usually tell because if you move the seam slightly there, a little bit there, you just hear because it squeaks a little bit. This is where Tamiya extra thin comes into its own, because that seam will just pull down the Tamiya solvent in there. I keep saying it's Tamiya, but it's not really. It's just acetone and butyl acetate. Parking ticket, unfortunately, I believe is the local council. It's in Wincanton. There was free parking for an hour opposite the shop, and then there was a car park behind it which you can park at all day. And today, unfortunately, right, I had a lot of customers in, so I parked in the 1 hour bit because I needed to open up. Opened up, thinking I would have a chance to go back out and move the car, and I just kind of didn't get a chance. So what I'm going to do is when I'm at the shop tomorrow, if I see him, see the parking guy, I'm going to say, hey, look, you gave me a ticket yesterday. You realise I run the shop. You realise how many more models I'll have to sell if I've got to pay this ticket. So just do me a solid and just lose it for me. I've got a little pile here of those little micro beads, little plastic sand. The only thing is, can't really put them back in the bottle because they've got other little bits in with them. I really just want to throw them away. It's the only disadvantage of that. So I need a project where I can stick that super glue with something. Right, so now the tail is on. That was step 23. Now we move on to step 24. Now, let us make sure we have all of any things we need to do. Right. For schemes A and B, we need a 1mm hole in the wings. I know which scheme we're doing, I just don't know whether it's A or B or C. I think it's A. Yes, it is A. So we do need those holes. So again, good to check before we cover anything up. So you can see 2 holes. We've got nice little guides. Just before I go through completely, just check again. That's definitely those. Huh. Yep. Part B9. Okay. It's always best to double check before you commit to getting that hole through. Same on the other side. Also had a conversation with my Hornby rep today after I sent him a ranting email yesterday following the announcement of the hovercraft that Airfix had announced. Now, you may think, why am I getting upset about a hovercraft? Of course, I'm not. I actually rather like that old vintage classic. It's something I'll probably get and do at some point. What I was annoyed about is that Jadlam had it on their website within, I don't know, half an hour or less of Airfix announcing it, which, given that as a retail store, I knew absolutely nothing about it, kind of pissed me off. So I sent him a ranting email, and then he rang me this morning as I was on my way to the shop, and basically the gist of my email, I'll give you a synopsis of it, was, hey, how come Jadlam have an advance notice of this, basically at the same time that Airfix are announcing it, they're announcing it and have stock and can sell it? Because what's going to happen is interested bods like yourselves are going to see that, and then immediately, if they see, if you've ever bought anything from Jadlam, they're going to see Jadlam, or maybe just on Jadlam's social media, they're going to see they're selling it. And it's just like, oh, wow, I might as well just get it straight away. So, of course, that means for small independent retailers like us, we just never get a look in, which isn't fair, right? So I was like, how come this happened? How come I didn't know about it? And so when I spoke to Mark, he was like, yeah, we've actually trialed this thing where we've got some select retailers that we're, kind of giving a heads up and stuff. And, and I was like, well, if you want my honest feedback about that as a retailer, and as a businessman, just, from business I've done in the last 30 odd years, I said, that's shit. Because already Airfix are the most difficult company to deal with as a retailer. So every other company I've got models from, so Revell, Creative, which cover, Meng and all that stuff, the Hobby Company, which is like Tamiya and Italieri and stuff, even small independent kind of importers like Tiger Hobby, which do things like Ryefield and Zokamura, who I'm getting some stuff in. They all have web portals. Ordering is super easy. I can see levels of stock and all that. You can't do that with Airfix. You have to fill in an Excel sheet and send it to them. So it's already a bit like archaic, the 1990s. And then you're saying that, and I can't see my back order status or any of that stuff. It's like, now you're saying that some retailers are, get preferential treatment. All you're going to do is drive people like me away from using Hornby as a supplier. I'll just be like, well, you can get Airfix anywhere. It's also one of the lowest margins of any of my suppliers. Why would I even bother stocking Airfix? And I said, and this comes from somebody who wants Airfix to succeed as a brand, and you're not doing me any favors. So if you want to give some feedback to your management of a trial and stuff, for one, you pissed me off, and I'm likely to look at stocking other modeling suppliers before you guys, if that's kind of how it's going to be from the future. So I'm hoping it is only a trial to get this feedback from other places, and that nonsense isn't continued, because that is not good business practice. That is a surefire way to drive retailers away from your your business, which I'm sure is not the intent. Unless Airfix and Hornby, of course, only want to deal with, 2 or 3 big places in the UK. I don't think that's their intent, though. It's already hard enough because you're already competing with Airfix directly because they have a web store where you can get everything directly from Airfix. So, yeah, it's been an interesting couple of days. Okay. So, let's see how this goes on. A little bit of misalignment there. Tiny amount. Like I said last time, we are very good at detecting very small anomalies as humans in general. And yet, if I were to go into the kitchen looking for my keys, I can pass them 7, 8, 9, 10 times, never see them. What's that about? Man looking, as I've always called it. Where you swear you've searched the kitchen for what you've been sent to get there or looking for, and then your partner, after you swear that you've never moved it and it was it should be exactly where you left it, and they come through and then pick it up from where it resided in front of your face. It's like, oh yeah, I was just man looking. Okay, that doesn't look too bad. That kind of looking like a bit like a hunter now. So for scheme A, we need part C51, which I'm quite glad of because I don't really want to deal with having bloody transparency in the nose. Kind of a pain in the ass. Let's move that out of the way where I'm not going to upset it. Of course, this is not the part I'm looking for. These are not the droids you're looking for. I just want to get some of these sprues trimmed down and out of the way. So, trimming off my spares box pieces. This is the flat, not pen-nibbed exhaust. Okay, got several pieces here. I think we still need, but I don't want to have this hulking great sprue. These are starting to get in the way now. I always find once you've got these big pieces of sprues like this, if you've still got them in the box and you're getting other sprues, these bits catch on absolutely everything. I don't know what it is about them. They just seem to be the perfect kind of size and sort of hook kind of length to be able to catch on absolutely everything you could possibly get them to catch on. Otherwise, this piece, I don't know whether I need it or not. Let's just take all of these away for the time being. I'm not going to try and trim that with a set of sprue cutters. Right, that's much better. All these can go in my spare sprue box. which makes things much easier for dealing with everything. Likewise, I'm just going to trim this sprue down, or frame. Everybody refers to them as sprues, but they are, of course, sprue frames. As I had one very irate commenter on my channel saying sprues is not the right name for them. It's like, nobody cares, dude. People do get the knickers in a twist about the funniest things. Yeah, I mean, I get that, James. You know, Fender and Gibson are the big names in guitars. You know, I guess in the 90s you got things like Ibanez coming in, but still, you know, Fender and Gibson are the one that everybody thinks of. And I get why they would, you know, want to deal with big stores because they got their brand to preserve. But I'm not sure model kits, you know, and the branding thereof is really in the same sort of league, and whether Airfix can afford to piss off little suppliers. I think that's kind of what I'm going with. I mean, from what I know of the guys at Airfix, I don't think that's their intent, right? Is just to go with the big guys, because otherwise, why invite people like me and Moss, you know, LPJ and all the others to an event? You know, why not just have, you know, the biggest YouTubers they can find? You know, get Plasmo and stuff. Maybe they've invited him, he just doesn't come. But it doesn't strike me as what they've been, you know, what they've been trying to cultivate as sort of a feeling around their brand. So, yeah. Also, I just think it's kind of a dick move. So we don't need this nose. This nose is surplus to requirements. So this is things we definitely don't need here. Our spares box stuff. I think all of those things we need. And then we don't need these. Or this. We certainly don't need this because we've already put that in. One that we've used, obviously. I've got lots of rears of Hunter spare. Okay. So where is part C? The sprue frame I had forgotten. This is what we actually want. Oops. So there's our nodes. Move these out of the way. Now we have a little bit more room in our box. Now, if I was worried about tail sitting, there is room in here to put more weight, but I think we're good. Is that supposed to be there? Let's check before trimming. definitely needs to be trimmed off. I'm a little bit wary since I trimmed off that little tab on the wing where the ailerons go and realised that it was actually a tab. Okay. That's rather tight. Wow, that's super tight. Wow. Okay. That actually looks like it's glued a little bit. Proud of where it should be. Which is an S. No, I mean, that is... Yeah, significantly tight. I think we're going to go with... I'm going to put quite a lot of TT on it and jam it on. I'm going for the no finesse approach to this problem. And see what happens. So we've got a decent fit there, but I want a decent fit above if possible. I don't want to get glue everywhere. Yeah, that's conforming. What I should have done, in hindsight, for anybody who's going to build this in future, is put the nose on at the same time that you glue the fuselage together so that that doesn't happen. Let's add more. I mean, one thing is for sure, this nose is not going to come off. If I need to put extra weight in the front, if this does tail sit, it ain't going to be from there. So I'm actually applying a fair bit of force now down on here. But that looks like it has worked. Alrighty. Brute force and ignorance has run out. I'm not sure that's a good message, but hey. Right, these bits can all go to the spares box. Of course, it's going to be out of reach. So I'll use this. Being. Oh, got that piece. But we have something significantly hunterish now. And we're done with page 6. We can move on to page 7 and step 25. Okay. So a scheme has lots of holes in wings to drill. But we need lower wings. Let's put that aside for a second. Lower wings. Okay, we did actually do some drilling before. But I didn't do the outer ones for some reason. Maybe because I just didn't see them at the time. Let's get this wings trimmed while I think about whether I'm going to put all of those tanks on or not. Let's have a look at the box art. Does the box art feature all of the wing tanks? It does. Okay. I'll presume it's correct, which I know is the wrong thing to do, but I will trust Airfix on this one, even after their schoolboy mistake of the Black Buck Vulcan. I think if this had been wrong, people would have shouted about it at the time. Not that I care that much. So there we go. Holes in the wing. Make sure they're nice and flush. Although you won't see any of this because the pylon will actually cover it. We got all of these pieces trimmed enough. Not quite. I think that's the only one. Just this inner tab. Again, you won't see it, but it's just for my slightly OCD part of my brain. A little bit just to shave there on that tab. Keep that nice and trim. Good. All right, so we have done all of the drilling. We are not doing step 25 because that is for wheels up. We are moving on to step 26 and 27, which are the wheel undercarriage bays. So we will C17 and C20, which we painted earlier, if you recall. C17 is this one. And part C61, I seem to recall on the sides of. There we go. Down here. So whilst I am going about this, quick question to everybody in the chat. Should we do this with flaps up or flaps down? And also, I believe you can angle the, well, I presume the ailerons at the end of the wing. They can go to various angles. Should I angle those as well, or not? So I am quite happy to leave these decisions in your hands, people. Let's get rid of those. Bring back the aircraft. Throw a piece across. And then, okay. So this, oh, it's a very nice positive fit there. Look at that. That is basically just slots in. This piece again, very nice. That just pops in position, locks in. That is very impressive engineering. And I also now realize I need to paint this piece, and I haven't. Bugger. And then this piece should just, yeah, fantastic. Really, really nice fit on those. Let's just slap in some liquid cement there. Just to get this all. Oh, that's a big blob. I'm really impressed with the fit of that, actually. Really good. So I don't think the painting of these is actually too much of an issue. It's basically I've got to do the oily steel and a wash over those. And then once those are done, I'll come back with some flat aluminium, just dry brush that I think just lifted a little bit. Again, we're not going to see any of this anyway, but you know it's there. I know it's there. That's enough, right? Flaps down, flaps down. Come on, where are you flaps up, people? Where are you? Make it easier for Alex, people. Come on, I have to start inventing people and putting them in the chat. Come on, three votes is nothing. 2 votes even. Also, I got these Miniart kits in today, and it's all John Alex's fault. I'll blame him. He said that I should do a Miniart kit, and I thought, well, I need to get some Miniart kits for the store. So maybe, a couple of them sell. I can't pay for one of them, so maybe I can do another one. I don't think I'm going to go to the craziness of doing a full interior one. I mean, there's a Stug 3, early Stug 3, which looks nice, but I mean, you're not going to see anything inside a Stug 3, right? Even if you opened every hatch available on it, which I think is like 2, you're not going to see anything. Also, I was looking at the part count. I can't remember which kit this was. I think it was just like I've got a couple of Panzer 3s, a B and a C. One of them has crew. I can't remember if one of them has full interior stuff. And I also got a Romanian, it's a T-60, it's a Romanian tank destroyer from World War II. I basically just put an existing field gun on a suitable chassis, and it was good, as they often did in World War II. Well, and in Ukraine, needs must. I looked at the part count. It's like part count 1,167. Holy mother of God! It's like 1,167 parts for a fairly small medium tank in World War II is just wow. It's like I think the Airfix Spitfire has like about 550 or something like that for 124 scale. These are 135th scale tanks with over double that. It's just like, that's insane. And yeah, 70 of those parts are probably the ammo, but even so. Flaps down, flaps down, flaps down. 3 flaps down. Is there anybody that would like to see the flaps up? I need 4 people to say flaps up to save me. Although, to be fair, I don't think there's much on these flaps. They're basically just blank, and we're doing it out of the box, so it's not like I need to do anything special here. Right, let's flap some oily steel on those. I still haven't found that palette that I specifically put aside for these streams. It's been swallowed by the... I'm doing man looking again. Okay, going back to my previous point. I'm just doing man looking. It can't be anything but that. Still, I do have a palette which is slightly less soiled in places. So I probably have, I don't know, 7 or 8 of these palettes. I've got a couple of the round ones and probably 5 or 6 of these oval ones, which I actually find a bit more useful. Actually, I should get some of these for the shop as well. Oh gosh, it's always need more stock. Here's my flat brush. Flaps up. Thank you, Exploring Unseen. Mark, I'm not sure I can do flaps up and down. Interesting a concept that might be. That's probably not a goer. It's a little bit too much paint there. I do like the detail that Airfix have given you in these, though. It's nice the way it goes right down the way that the structure of the aircraft is. That's pretty good. I think overall, so far, I really like this kit. Hedging your bets. There's no hedging bets here. It's all in or nothing. All right. So that's 26 and 27 covered. Oh, we've also got a little lip in that splitter here, which is also 56, but we're going to do that when these are all constructed. So C42 and C41, counterintuitively the wrong way around. C42 first. Okay, these are not large parts. Remember I spoke right at the beginning about the white sheet and spotting parts? So easy for these to go off. What I sometimes do, if I've got a tiny part, I mean, this isn't an especially tiny part, but it's pretty small, right? Is I'll get one of these clips and I'll actually trying to get it carefully. I'll put the clip on it first before clipping it off, because then I know there's no way it can fly off into the carpet, be eaten by the most dread and fell of all beasts, the carpet monster. Right. Now, looking at this, It does have to go on a certain way, which is a bit of a pain in the ass, but hey ho. It is also not easy to handle. I do need to trim that edge off. Just a tiny, tiny little bit. There. Just to make that smooth. And they sort of go in at a slight angle that way. Slightly canted in, I believe. Let's get that piece in. Really doesn't want to play ball. There it is. That's good. And the other one should be a little easy because I've already got it in these. You can't see it because I can barely see it on here, but there is a little ridge here, which is the piece that actually goes into here. And you see, the other advantage of having it in these is I can actually just put it where it's supposed to go, add cement, and then release the clamp, and voila! That was a lot easier than me trying to fiddle about doing it with my fingers and tweezers. It's just a matter of making sure it's at the right angle, which I'm not sure it is. In fact, that looks like it's the wrong way around. Not sure how that. Yeah, that looks better. Interesting. Well, again, it got rescued without any issues. There you can see we've got the two little pieces in there. My dog wants to go out. Excuse me 1 second. Oh. Go then. Pablo, in or out? Oh, he's hedging his bets as well, Mark. he's half in and half out of the door. I think he heard or smelt something interesting outside, and he just wanted to have a look. Pablo, come in. It's cold. Letting all the heat out. Ah, Zinzan, welcome. Good to see you in the shop. Oh, yeah. If you are visiting anywhere in the southwest, my shop is only about 2 or 3 minutes off the A303, which is the main trunk road. Also one of the most dangerous roads in the UK, principally because it goes from very high speed dual carriageway to single carriageway meandering through tiny villages. It's not a huge amount of notice unless you know the road well. But it is super convenient, if I do say so myself. Right, so those little pieces, the 42 and 41 complete. We go on to here. We've made all of our little holes previously. So now we can go and put the wings on. Moment of truth. I've been talking about the engineering of this kit. This is where Airfix need to come through for me. Ow! All right, that is bloody sharp. I mean, that is a crisp molding. When you stab yourself with a piece of the kit rather than your hobby blade, that's when you know you've got crisp casting. Okay. Wow, that is, again. So I've just pushed in that piece into there. That was, again, push fit tight. And then this just comes down and that is spot on. Airfix, I commend you, if not for your current business practice with trade, for your molding of kits. That's pretty damn good. Really damn good, that. Let's see if I can get it together and eliminate any squeak on the plastic. Avoiding that little overspill there. So as this comes together as well, it is kind of pulling everything. Oh, that was a mistake, Alex. That was a mistake. That was one of those moments I thought, I'll just risk that. And I shouldn't have done. Got a big drip of. So if you ever do something stupid like I've just done, drop a load of gunner, never ever wipe it. Because now the plastic is reactive. If you're going to get rid of it, I would suggest you wick off any very gently, because any pressure is going to push into the plastic like that. But just let it dry, let it evaporate without doing anything with it. Having extra thin, and oh god, idiot. Having extra thin is just pure solvent, so it will just evaporate away. So the evaporative properties of most liquid cements are due to acetone. Acetone evaporates extremely quickly. And things that they put in, like butyl acetate, methyl ether ketone, butyl acetate, ethyl acetate, retard that, whilst also having their own plastic melty action. Because essentially what you want is to melt the plastic, melt the styrene at the contact points long enough so that you're welding it, you know, but also have a short enough drying time so that just evaporates away and doesn't cause any issues. Right, I made a real balls up of that gluing job, I must say. Fortunately, all of those sins will be covered. So, as I've mentioned in many other videos, there are few complete dead ends in modeling, if any. Should that tab be there? I think it should, because I trimmed it off the other one. No. Again, don't expect professionalism when you come here. This is seat of your pants modeling. What I really like about these intakes, if you can see, is the way they've managed to capture like little standoffs in the middle there. Hang on. This time I did prepare, and I've got my movable light here. Let's just put this on. Here we go. Although that's the wrong color. There we go. So I can now move that in the same plane as my webcam, so you should be able to see things easier. So the way that they've covered these little standoff pieces and this, so in that one that I've just done, that's really quite a nice rendition of the intake of the Hunter. That feels pretty solid as well. Now that that is all on, let's just check this piece that I've actually trimmed it, because I don't think I trimmed the other one properly. Watch it be that this one is all finished, and it is. Yep. Okay. So again, slot this in. This is you can see what a snug fit that is. Snug is a good word. It is snug, and then it just puts it at the right position. Remember I said about how like difficult aligning the wings were when we were just dry fitting before? It just positions it perfectly. That's really nice. Really like that. That's good. So let's get some Tamiya here. Then I shall have a look at the chat, because I have been neglecting it while I've been throwing glue around, pouring glue all over the model. Right. Well, you can't go out right now because I'm right in the middle of this, mister. I don't know why you've chosen this particular moment to want to go out again. Because it's the least convenient possible time, maybe? Yes? Yeah. Right, let's try not to make a repeat of the mistake previously. So the issue is why I'm loading up my little brush a little more is because there are these attachment points in here, and if I don't have any glue on them, it will do that little if I squeeze the wing in the future. It probably won't pull the wing where it needs to be in terms of cord, etc. So it's not that I am using liquid cement really as it's intended to be, pulled in by capillarity. I'm actually pushing it through into the internal surface to hit those attachment points, because the last thing we want is a squeaky wing. Right, now it is actually together. I think we just give it a little push in just to make sure we are completely flush in all those pieces. But I think we're good. And then I'm just coming in just to hit those points on the inside of the undercarriage legs. Typically, if I'm doing this sort of thing, a wing, a big fuselage section like this, I would use compactor. I would use this precision cement, because essentially any glue like this is exactly the same as Tamiya Extra Thin, or a liquid cement with a little bit of styrene in it, just a little bit of clear styrene. And what that does is just retards the drying, so the evaporation, so that that solvent is in contact with the styrene longer, dissolves it a little bit deeper. So typically, if I'm building like this, and I've got a big component like this, I'll use precision cement on all of the surfaces, the internal pieces for sure, and then probably most of the edges, but not right to the edge. Close it up, and then use Tamiya Extra Thin as it's supposed to be used, just on the touching the edges, so it's drawn in by capillarity and just seals the edges, because then you get the combination. The disadvantage of doing this for a live stream is it takes longer to dry. So this is about brevity, a little bit more. Now, interestingly, a tiny gap developing there, where the wing, I think, is just pushing away from the fuselage slightly. So having seen that, I'm going to clamp this. I mean, not a big gap, it's like maybe 0.5 millimeter. It wants to develop. But let's see if we can stop that from happening. These donor clamps are really good for some things. They're not very good at putting a lot of force on. They can do about as much as your fingers. But more than that, they struggle. Yeah, this is quite a complex joint, actually, because you've got the top and bottom, and then you've got a little bit of side pressure here just to get it in there. I might have to just hold it for a little. So as I do that, let me have a look at the chat. Okay, Richard, you've bought from my online store recently. Thank you very much. Roger's off for his dinner. I don't blame you. I've got about 50 minutes before I'm going to retire for that. So 8 o'clock is generally, because my girlfriend is from Barcelona, of course the Spanish tend to eat later. So we tend to eat between 8 and 9 p.m. And our dog is conditioned now at 8 o'clock. We can always tell when it's coming to 8 o'clock because he gets antsy and just kind of like whining and stuff. I think it's amazing how dogs' internal clocks work, how accurate they can be. Okay. So we do have little bits where, see, there is a, see if you can see on the stream, there's a little gap just here. How we focus that is, let's try and put a bit more light on it, just to show the highlight a little bit. So tiny gap there. This surface is a little bit proud. Again, I'm talking fractions of a millimeter. Look, so if I go along with my tweezers, it just catches. All right. A little gap here, which I can actually relieve a lot just by pushing that in. Little seam along here, but really very, very little. That's a very good fit. The top, we got a little bit just on the edges of these here, a little bit messed up where I put a bit too much cement on and then pressed it in just to try and reduce that gap. We've got a little bit of, again, tiny 0.05 of a millimeter maybe here. Same there. All stuff that's within the realms of, you know, sanding. Yeah, obviously I've got this area that I fucked up. Tiny gap has developed there. The nose, we do have a little bit of a gap there. I'm not sure I'm going to do much or anything about that, to be honest. I think that is in the realms of panel line. It could be excused as that, I think. But there we go. Yeah, it's coming along. Definitely hunterish. No. Oh. You hear that? One of those little pieces of metal has worked its way loose. Always happens, doesn't it? As soon as you glue something up, something will come loose inside, and there's no way. Because if you think, that's there, that's behind here, which is sealed from every possible direction. I think I'd need to put a needle in there and inject super glue in. There's no way I can do that safely. What an arse. What an arse. Well, I mean, it's not the end of the world. It's not like people are going to be picking it up and flying it around. But it's just annoying, that sort of stuff. So, B12. I believe we cut B12 off with its compatriots 10 and 11 earlier. I think the rudder on the Hunter is tiny. Tiny little rudder. But then the vertical stabilizer, if you think, compared to the size of the aircraft, is not very big. Interesting shape as well to this. It is slightly curved on the top, slightly curved at the back at the top here. Just got a little injection molding scheme underneath. Take that down a little scrape. Shave that piece off at the bottom. Likewise with that. Again, I think a quick scrape is all we're going to need. I don't think this really needs sanding because it is going to be glued in position on that ridge. So okay, I might need a little trim here as well because that seemed to be rather proud. There we go. There she goes. Nicely set in. That's a perfect fit, actually. Look at that. Yep, doesn't even come out. I thought it was falling out because of the noise, but that's that bloody piece of metal that has worked its way loose inside. Okay, I do have a little bit, just a little bit to trim there, which I'm going to have to be very careful about because I don't want to gouge the plastic. It would be safer to sand this. It's faster to do it that way. That's water, that's okay. I'm not going to put any deflection on the rudder. I think. There. There we go. What? Okay then. Let you go then. He's a very vocal dog when he wants something. So the alignment of that rudder is very good. That is very impressive. Again, engineering-wise, Airfix, thank you. Now she's starting to get those classic hunter lines. Look. Next, we come to the horizontal stabilizers, but I am going to wait for those. I think. Okay. So we have the flaps, which you guys want down. 80 degrees. Ailerons, 13 degrees either way, potential deflection. So A and B, we got part D4. So let's put these pieces actually on the fuselage here. Well, the wing, I suppose. What was that? D4? D, yes. Which I seem to recall. No, I'll get those out because we'll be doing those in a second. There are our flaps. D14 and 15 I don't think we're using because those are version C. More spare parts. So here's a question to everybody. What do you do with your spare parts? Do you keep them? Do you have a spares parts stash? Do you get rid of them? Do you give them to the people? I mean, obviously, I keep all of mine because I'm a hoarder. But what about you guys? Do you keep yours too? D4 first. Richard keeps them. So a follow-up question to that, and again, anybody who hasn't answered, who wants to put their comments in the chat, please expand. Do you have a dedicated place for your spares? And do you segregate them? So do you have a spares container like Dave has just put up, an old sweet tub that you put all your spare bits in, which is heresy, by the way, Dave? Or, like me, do you obsessively categorize them? Which is, of course, the correct way to do it. So these pieces, just going into the edge of the wing here. So the regular Hunter had obviously these flaps with these little cutouts. The navalized version had full length flaps. Obviously, try and get as much lift as possible. A little bit there. And I suppose a follow-up question to the what do you do with them and do you categorize them is then what do you actually do with them? The other thing you can see I'm doing here, there is a pin eject, a raised pin mark here. I'm just trying to shave down, being that you guys want the flaps down. It's hardly visible, but and again we won't see any of this, but it's just good practice, I think, to try these, especially in places that can't be seen, right? So practicing your skills. I should have done it before I put that piece in. Again, hindsight's 2020. You'll never stop learning in this hobby. I think practicing your skills on areas like this, which is a real model, but on an area that's not going to be seen. So if you really mess it up, it actually doesn't matter as much. But I think it helps to sort of focus and develop your skills. I think there are also that horrible phrase, teachable moments or learnable moments. But certainly self-teaching moments throughout our hobby. You should never be afraid to try things. Tubs for different scales. Oh, that's an interesting concept. I'm going to have to call my annoying dog in that moment before it starts to get annoyed. Pablo, come on. In you come. Come on, come here. I don't know what you're barking at. There's nothing there. You just want your attention, don't you? So this bit. Again, if you look at the tolerances on this, there's basically almost zero tolerance fits on these. So really, really good. Very, very impressive, the engineering. I mean, I think the engineering that kits are displaying these days is actually higher. I think that let's say the rate limiting factor in a lot of builds now is us as the humans making them rather than the companies, which is not the case it used to be, right? So, I mean, just to give you, let's give a straight side-by-side example, because I know I've got it here. Say that. This, you will have seen, if you watch my best Beaufort video, you'll have seen me look at this kit. This is a high plains model. So this is limited run. So this is perhaps not a fair comparison, but I also showed the frog kit, which is down there somewhere, but the high plains one is good enough. So just to give you an idea of what we're comparing to, right? So yeah, this is limited run, but also considered to be a very accurate Beaufort kit for the time. And pretty detailed. 1/72 scale, you have internal detail molded in. But look at that flash. And again, yes, this is limited run. I get that. But the frog kit was no different in a lot of ways. And this does make up into a lovely little kit. But the work you had to do with the engineering tolerances, just in how they created this kit were completely different. And I think we often forget how lucky we are as the hobby has progressed that we get to do kits like this. And bear in mind that high plains Beaufort kit probably didn't cost an awful lot less, proportionally speaking, than this Hunter in 48 scale, because, you know, again, limited run, more expensive, higher cost to get all of that. You know, so we do have an enormous wealth of choice these days of very high quality kits. I think sometimes modellers do sound a little bit spoiled when they talk about, oh, you know, Airfix made this mistake, or Academy did that, or whatever. It's just like, yeah, but is that a big thing? You know, in the grand scheme of things, just even in the grand scheme of modeling things, right? I mean, we're not talking about, you know, your country being invaded, you know, the Ukrainians are having to deal with. We're talking about, you know, some slight discrepancy in a plastic model kit that you make for fun. Wayne, you heretic, binning all spares. I'm going to start a sanctuary for unwanted spares parts. I shall issue postage-free labels to all of those with spares that want to send them in. I shall harbour their shelter. I will, bear with me. I'll get how my So I have my spares in these little drawers in one of those containers. Well, actually, I've got a couple, right? And then they're all labeled air-to-surface missiles in 148 scale. that's how pedantic I got with them. All right. So I put those pieces on. All of the flaps, blah, 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 blah. Okay. We get all of that. Just trying to skip ahead and just see what the kind of next steps for me are. And I think it's going to be here. So quite often when I'm building, I'll skip through the instructions here and look at what are the things that are going to affect what I am doing. So the next step that I really want to take with this is to actually sand some of these seams, right, to get it to pretty much where I want it. Get rid of all of these little pieces to within reason. I'm not going to go mad on this build. But in order to do that, I don't want to have to redo it, right? I want one session, really, ideally, with that. So if I start putting on the horizontal stabilizers, that's really going to get in the way of this. I'm likely to knock them off. I won't have good access to some of these seams. So I'm looking for pieces that I can put on that will still preserve that. So this is a good one, for instance. So here, step 60, part C26, sorry, part C26 on. And that will not have an effect on the following sanding, etc. Yeah, because otherwise I could be sanding pieces here which don't make any difference. What are you doing, Pablo? Get there's your blanket. He's trying to get his under his blanket and he's knocking my 148 scale modern air surface missiles. Right. So we need part C26. We don't use part F5 or part F4. In fact, I don't think I'm using really anything from F, am I? No. Airfix have included this extra little sprue, which I have completely neglected. I should have kept it all in and actually offered it as a, you know, naval variant sprue if somebody wanted it. Now, of course, it'll get categorized and separated in my spares. Does mean though I can get rid of this main sprue here. Okay, oh, cut that one. I'm pretty sure I don't need a hook on mine. But I will confirm before discarding it. Okay, so that actually goes in there for that. And only, yeah. You never know, sometimes the RAF and aircraft manufacturers did odd things and included stuff which was never actually used. But not in this case. Can go there. Another sprue for the great sprue bin. One of the things I've actually considered doing with the shop is actually having like a sprue collection surface, or a, just mail in your sprues and I'll recycle them, because it's not something that manufacturers do. The only thing is I don't know whether I've got enough storage for it, because if it was very successful and hundreds of people give me sprues, it's just like, what am I going to do with them all? I mean, the plan obviously is to recycle them, to shred them, but because companies like Airfix can reuse styrene, basically you can shred this down, and I mean, it's thermoplastic, right? So under controlled circumstances, you can melt this down and re-inject it into something, or even use it as like partial additive with new pellets. The reason Airfix don't do that is because collection is too expensive. But of course, if there was one single collection point and they only had to do once every month or whatever, that might be viable. So that is something I am thinking of potentially proposing. But not if they give Jetlam bloody advance notice and I don't get a chance and screw them. Have I tried Vallejo plastic putty? I have not, nor will I be doing. I have used similar things in the past, and it never works exactly as you intend. I never find that I get a completely. It's a bit like if you used wall filler, for instance, really good wall filler on cracks and things. It doesn't matter how smooth you get it, you still need to go over it with something. And even if you did like a wet cloth over it or something, there'll always be like a little lump or a little divot or something. So, not that I won't try Vallejo acrylic putty, I just know that it's not going to be. There is no panacea in modeling, right? If somebody produces a product that works first time, every time like that, everybody would buy it, right? And everybody else would go out of business in their filling stuff. I believe, not to say that, you using that and you finding that as a really useful tool is invalid, because it's absolutely not. I just know that for me, I tried that kind of thing. It's okay. It just doesn't suit my style of modeling, I guess. For better or worse, I mean, that might be to my detriment, right? I might just be cutting off my own nose to spite my face. But I have no skin in the game, right? So I quite like Vallejo as a company. I've also had some issues in the past with Various different putties, where after an extended period of time, the adhesion, especially ones that don't actually bond with the plastic at a chemical level, then can actually come loose, especially if you knock them. So if you, I mean, I know it's not ideal. Nobody wants to knock or drop their model, but sometimes it happens, right? And that kind of limited but fairly sharp shock can actually just basically completely fracture the union. So Games Workshop made liquid green stuff. Of course, there is green stuff as well, which is, you know, sculpting putty. Milliput have had similar things. I mean, there's a two-part putties, but all kinds of similar things. They all work on similar principles. And then there are various modeling putties, of course. But yeah, those acrylic ones, really nice, especially if you're making bespoke parts, which is why, of course, they're used for sculpting. I just find that whenever you've got a union between two dissimilar pieces, I might just be quiet here because I don't want to lose this inside the fuselage. Then there is always going to be some sort of discrepancy, right? Again, my personal experience, you just may be very much better at using it than I am. So that part just slots in quite nicely, although just a little deep. So I'm just going to pry it up a little on that side and just use these here just to manipulate it. Because, of course, the best solution to any misalignment and things is to not have them in the first place, which, of course, is easier said than done. So I guess the other question, which I kind of thinking I might know the answer to already, is speed brake up or down? But before you guys answer, well, no, actually not before, because I've left my phone inside. So if you have a preference of this speed brake being up or down, again, let me know in the chat. I'll just have a look in the brake just to make sure that speed brakes could be down when it was landed, because, for example, the Lightning, quite a few people show the speed brakes extended on that when it's on the floor, which didn't actually happen. The speed brakes were retracted as soon as it landed. I'm informed by people that used to work on Lightnings, and they were never extended on the ground unless there was an issue with them and they needed some sort of reparative work. Not I'm trying to get out of putting a speed brake down, by the way. So even if the speed brake is up, I don't think I'll put it in at this stage, because we do have a little bit of a, again, tiny, but little bit here where that is a little proud. It's going to need a little bit of work, and we've got a little gap here, and the union here needs a little work. But again, I don't intend going crazy on this. But again, I'm not just going to ignore it. So that is all of that. I think we're getting to the stage, because again, I'm not going to do all of these pieces. I'm not going to put those pieces on until after sanding. Yep. So actually, that's a good point to leave this piece because it gives us a chance to cure before I start doing anything sandy on it. So let's put that aside. And then the last 15 minutes, let's make some tanks and rockets and stuff. I don't think we need the rockets, they're all spares, but I will make them up anyway. One, because I like making up rockets. And two, because then they can all go in the spares box as complete assemblies. Otherwise, I'll end up losing, one piece. And we get to see how they look. I mean, certainly it seems to be that they look okay. Not that there was an awful lot to these rocket boats in reality. So one of the things, again, that I've had it's a good experience in the shop this week. A couple of people that have worked on or used ferrets in the past. So some interesting tales about, mainly about them catching on fire, which was not something I was particularly aware of before speaking to Daniel and the other chap that came in the shop. That was a primary concern. I think Daniel said he was working on, he had 4 different ones catch on fire. So yeah, interesting hearing, the real life stories of some of the things that we model. I always find, as I've said before, the research on some of these things is part of the journey for me. It's part of the modeling experience. And to be able to hear some of these things from, people who actually worked with them or, flew or drove these aircraft and vehicles, I think it is, one, a real privilege, and two, is always amusing because inevitably some of the almost pedestal that we put some of these things on, especially with models, is a little bit rose tinted glasses. Yeah, that's not a bad little rocket pod. What it reminds me, which shows my age, although these are the reruns I saw, not the originals, are the old Jerry Anderson UFO series, which they had a couple of UFO interceptors, which had these kind of multiple. It was a submersible one. It wasn't the big spaceborne ones, which had an enormous missile on, which I think it was Dinky or Corgi. One of them produced a green model of for some reason, even though the ones in the show were white. I remember having one of those, and in the days when you could actually have a great big missile fitted to something and it had a little trigger that you shot it out and it sprung across the room on a spring. I don't think you could get away with that now for a toy. Health and safety would pounce on you. Speaking of that series, actually, I don't know if any of you know of the Jerry Anderson live action series UFO, but it was one of those things that I think was undergoing reruns when I was a child, and it always seemed like a grown-up show and quite scary, and it was quite impactful, I guess. Because my dad watched it and I was there with him, and it was just this. The Martians terrified me, but it had cool stuff, as a lot of Jerry Anderson did for kids. Thunderbirds and Stingray and the like. And I've always wanted to do a model of the UFO from UFO. It's just really hard to get hold of. There isn't kind of a regular injection molded kit as far as I'm aware. They tend to be very expensive, bespoke kind of things. And I've seen a 3D printed STL for one, which isn't that great. And because the external surface of it was actually transparent, you know, again, 3D printing isn't ideal for that. The clarity achievable is, you know, not really what you'd want, even though it's tinted. I think the other live action show, again, which I'm looking forward to do some models from, is Space 1999. Pablo. Now, I just heard outside a little thud and a bell ringing, which is the cat, isn't there, that comes around intruding into your territory, Pablo. That's what that is. So yeah, the Eagle Transporter, apart from being, I think, quite a, inverted commas, realistic science fiction vehicle, you know, in that it had attitude jets, you know, four-way little gas thrusters for maneuverability and stuff. Apart from the fact it had a laser, you know, which wasn't very realistic. It was a bit futury, as I guess in the 60s and 70s, you know, the future was going to be lasers. Not that lasers aren't very useful, but in terms of weapons, you know, it's only really now that the US and Russia are getting somewhat viable and directed energy weapons. Hey, no. So there, a couple of nice rocket pods there. No, Pablo, no. BS1WI, you have a studio-sized model to build of the UFO. I am exceptionally envious, sir. Oh, madam. I don't mean to misgender you inappropriately. That must be a fair size as well if it's a studio scale model. I can't imagine it was very cheap either. The question is, where did you obtain it from? Or is it a secret? I think there is, or there was only a couple of actual full-size, you know, studio-size models for the show, and I think they both got wrecked, is my understanding. There were smaller ones that they had, which they actually blew up for the, you know, the practical effects. I don't think any survived, unlike the, is it Shadow 1, I think it was, which I believe did. Actually, one of the things, a couple of things I've got coming into the shop next week are the Hawk Space 1999 Hawk fighters. So my most recent importer gives me access to a lot of the slightly more difficult to get hold of, generally, manufacturers and some sort of importers in the UK. So things like the great big, you know, 12-inch Space 99 Eagle, Zokimura, Ryefield, etc. Not that I can keep a great stock of them, because they are generally pretty big models and therefore a sizable investment. And of course, anything that I invest in that doesn't sell relatively quickly is effectively just dead money on the shelves. So, you know, you need a pull-through rate with a retail shop. You want stuff that gets on the shelves, brings people in to either the website or the store, that they're interested enough to, you know, pop by and look. But then you want people to buy it so that you can replenish that and put those funds back into getting more stuff. But it's more that I want people to know that I can get all of this stuff and have that capability, because, for instance, a big Eagle model from Space 1999, you know, not that difficult, not that hard, sorry, not easy to get a hold of generally, unless you want to pay silly money on eBay and stuff. Whereas, you know, I can give them a reasonable price. You know, I try not to sell it at SRP. I try to at least be competitive with internet stuff, and of course, without having the hassle of having that shipped and shipping costs and such and so forth. And when you get to those big ones, anyway, if you're elsewhere in the UK, shipping in the store over £50 is free. So again, it's just a matter of ordering it, and then you'll get it. But again, you know, you've got to be able to establish that knowledge, understanding with your clientele. Okay, so we're coming up to the 2-hour mark. We are pretty close to getting all of these accessory tanks complete. We've got the Hunter ready for sanding. We'll let it cure for an hour or so while I eat, and people can go and do various bits, and then whoever comes along, be it the same or different people, at 9 o'clock, I will be just taking the seams off, just getting the Hunter into a ready state to be able to be painted. And with some luck, we can get some paint on it. Good night, Michelle. Thanks for joining. Interesting, these almost have like a different surface texture. I don't know if that's my imagination. So, of course, when I sand the Hunter, I'll also be sanding, or let's say addressing, all of the seams on these, because, of course, they wouldn't have had great big longitudinal seams, because they are made in parts, as is shown by this panel line rivets. Okay. Almost there. That's this one I haven't done. Bernie Walsh. Now, you will have to enlighten me, because one of the things is I am absolutely terrible with names. So, which you might have thought would have been a disadvantage for somebody who's been in really the commercial world his entire business life. But I recognize faces. I always remember people. I see somebody once, I'll always remember them. I might not remember what they're called, but I will remember them. So you'll have to enlighten me as to who Bernie Walsh is. If I should know, that is. I mean, if it's just Bernie Walsh down the road, I'm unlikely to know who that is. Whereas it's Bernie Walsh, studio model maker, then that might make a little bit more sense. I have to say, actually, these go together very nicely. It doesn't, sometimes you put tanks together like this and there is an obvious seam or misalignment. I mean, obviously, a lot of it is down to how you put it together, but you can't put together parts that don't fit properly. That looks pretty much spot on. So here we go, the final meandering trace of Tamiya extra thin. Get this together. Yeah, that is really nice. I don't know whether it's because they use these tabs, these internal tabs, rather than hole and post fitments. But the alignment on those, if we can get that lined up on the webcam, you see, is pretty much, that looks pretty much spot on. That is not going to take much just to eliminate, any trace of a seam along there. So there we go. Where we stand at the end of that 2 hours, we have our Hunter, wings on, we've got speed brake attachment point, we've got all the stores. This is all ready for a bit of sanding, and then we can bring in those other elements before we then get onto painting. So we'll call it at that point. For those of you that are due to start again in an hour, I shall look forward to seeing you then. If you've just joined for the session, then I thank you very much for that. And hopefully you'll join and look at the next piece on when it's obviously offline. And then I think probably maybe one session after the one today, we might have this complete. So that's all. Thanks everybody for joining me and sticking with it. And hopefully I'll see you in an hour's time. Bye.